There you go.
Thank you. All right, I will call the meeting to order. This is the Shelby Historic Preservation Commission meeting, February 19th, 2021. We'll do roll call. Lacey Bassett.
Present.
Pat Carlisle.
Present.
Chris Drain, I'm here. Mary Durkin.
Present.
Mayor Shag, not sure if he's going to be here or not. Joe Geis just stepped out. And Jessica Gribben, I don't see yet. Any guests? We don't have any guests today. So we've established a quorum. When Joe gets back, I'll ask him if there were any public comments submitted. Any additions or changes to the order of the agenda? I do know that I have the wrong dates on the digital and written minutes, so I'll correct that when we get to that point. Now you know my secret that I just copy and paste what I did from the month before. So
Way to go.
there's one other thing that I'd like to add. I would like a little bit of discussion on maybe a blog for property owners and the public rather than sending emails out to them as part of the communication that we're doing. And I talked to Joe a little bit about it, but we'll talk a little bit more today. So I'll add that under publicity. Any other additions or corrections to the changes of the agenda? Okay, let's go back to number 2. Any public comments submitted? Joe, did you receive any public comments this month?
Did not.
Thank you. Okay, number 4, motion to approve the January 15th organizational meeting minutes.
I'll motion.
Thank you. We have a motion from Lacey, a second.
I can second it. I didn't look at them again.
Oh,
we didn't have those.
they,
Sent them late yesterday.
yeah, they were sent yesterday.
For the December 18th meeting? I didn't get.
I'm sorry, January 15th.
Okay,
the-
I can second that one.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I'm
Okay.
just a little confused here. I have to see, I can't print anything, so I have to do everything off my iPad.
Yeah, and that was my mistake to leave
Okay.
December on
Okay,
there.
yes, I will second the January minutes.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Motion to approve the January 22nd public hearing minutes. Those went to the city council, but we still need to approve them here.
I can move.
Thank you, Mary. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Second from Lacey. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Let's see, we've got under funding and grants, we've got the certified local government grant. You all know by now that City Council did not approve the grant moving forward to be submitted to SHPO. So I have further down in the agenda more discussion about the local design guidelines that the grant was supposed to cover. So we can talk about that there. I do want to remind you of one thing though, and I gave you the link just for future reference to that grant. There are provisions to restore or rehabilitate a National Register listed property in our community. And it doesn't break down whether it's a for-profit venture or a nonprofit. I need to contact SHPO to ask more information, like does it still need to go through City Council for approval and things like that. But you know, I can think of at least 4 structures right now, some nonprofit, some for-profit, where you know they could benefit from that money. And I kind of feel like maybe we, should have had a backup for this grant, in case something happened, that, someone else could benefit from it. I mean, by the time we found out that we weren't going to be able to use it, it was a little bit too late to ask somebody else to try to send something in. And if we had to have approval from city council, there wouldn't have been enough time to do that. So, $20,000 would, go a long way towards rehabilitation for another property. Pat?
I kind of looked at your link very quickly there. I believe that those types of grants are 60/40s.
Right.
Priorities, that's one. And I don't know how competitive those are. I'd be curious to know how competitive those particular types of grants are, to ask the SHPO people, to ask Adam, how competitive is this stuff? What's a good way to win one of those grants? And of course, as you're talking about, our cycle now would put us into November of this year that we could start looking at, or before that, actually start thinking about where's an owner or a building that might benefit from this.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not federal money, then it doesn't have if it's really state money, I don't know. There might be different rules and regs on how it's administered. So I'd be curious how those are administered. That might be different.
I believe it's federal money that's funneled down to the state. So I am pretty sure that it would still, that they would have to go by the guidelines.
Okay.
The Interior Secretary's guidelines. And that's true to your point too. How, if we do allow someone else to apply for it, how do we go about doing that? We will need to have something in place on our part to say, yes, this property is, worth it. I mean, all 4 of the properties I'm thinking of, and I'm sure there's more than that even, are all worthy of, being able to use this money from this grant. But we have to make sure that we have a fair way of helping someone along in that respect. So to be continued, I think. But Pat?
Since we're a CLG, I have a feeling that we would be one of the primary, if not the organization that would assist the individuals to get, if somebody was interested in this, to get them through this grant process. It would fall on us to be the leaders to help them through that, since we are the CLG and we're kind of the face of the CLG. No offense, Joe, you're a CLG too.
Right. Well, his name's on all the grants, so.
Everything. Nothing happens without Joe White.
Yeah. My main question at this point is, I'm not sure whether it still has to go through city council for approval. It was not really clear on that, although the paperwork kind of makes it look like it would be. Mm-hmm. But and there's also provisions. I mean, the city would not be putting any money or fronting any money towards this. It would be up to the property owner, and so we would have to have assurances, and I think it talks about that in the grant, the assurances that that they have the funding to match. So anyway, something to definitely consider in the months moving forward, and possibly creating some type of a system where we decide who we can support. So any other comments on that? Okay. Oh, let's see. Number 2, Rich History Alliance grant. I think the next grant cycle is April 1st. We can talk about that next month and see. I think the only holdup right now, I think, really is COVID and whether we can get together to actually have a workshop. So it's still kind of on hold. And I don't think, from what I understand, the Rich History Alliance probably wouldn't approve anything until we had a specific date, and and at this point, we don't have a date, so. Number 3, budget appropriations. I talked to Brian Crum, and they're in that process now where we needed to give them some ideas about what we wanted to spend money on. So I requested $26,000 again. That's what we requested last year. The breakdown would be about $24,000 for another CLG grant if you know, the commission went for one again. About $1,000 for education. There's a really good Heritage Ohio conference. I looked on the site to see if it was going to be in person again this year, and there's not really an indication whether it is or not yet. Last year they had 2 full weeks of different webinars that you could go to, and I did pay for it last year and was well worth going. So I'd like to have money in there for us to be able to do that. Let's see, and other webinars too. If you find something else that you feel like would be appropriate and you'd like to go, then I'd like to make sure that we have the money to do that. I need to talk to Brian about how that would be done and how we would get reimbursed and all that. I'm not sure, but Pat.
There are several organizations that a lot of them are doing virtuals now, but there's one that is just for commissioners. There's a National Alliance of Commissioners, and I did all of their webinars about 2 years ago. But they do a conference kind of thing, and I think it was in Indianapolis. It wasn't that far of a drive a couple of years ago. Anyway, some of those are really cool. If they get back to in person, there is all of that conversation outside of the meetings. Mary knows what I'm talking about, where you really learn more than you did in sitting in a meeting. When you get to do that, best practices, how does it work for you, and that kind of stuff. Side note, hi Tim, I see you in the background.
Okay, thank you. And then I also put in $1,000 for design and printing of local design guidelines if we get to that point. Any other window signs that we need. I know that when I ordered the Ohio inventory signs from Kane Graphics, we didn't know about the other 30 or so buildings. So, and we may even want to look at doing something different for homes that might be a smaller window cling. So we'll have to look at that later. Any other comments on the budget? Anything else you think we should put in there, Pat?
When's the date that appropriation meeting is being held?
It's not been set yet.
It hasn't been set yet. Okay.
No, they're doing it a little bit different this year. They split up the utilities. We had that yesterday, which was long enough just for that. So the general fund and everything else, there's not been a date set.
Okay, good enough.
Okay. Any other comments? Anything else that you think that we should include? Okay. Let's see. Number 4 under designation committee, approval from City Council. Oh, this is just informational. Approval from City Council February 1st for locally designated historic landmarks, the Shelby Center Historic District contributing structures, Most Pure Heart of Mary Church, and Shelby Mutual. As you remember, we postponed Marvin Memorial Library and the Shelby Pure Milk Company barn. We're in the process with the barn of getting more information. There was someone who stepped up to offer to help paint the barn, which was an issue. I don't know how far they're getting with that respect, and I think I'm not sure that it was for free. But anyway, that's not our concern. But anyway, that's in the work. I know that it was a concern for some people. We're in the process of doing more work on the history of it, and like I mentioned, Gary Bly is helping with that. And then Marvin Memorial Library, I've since had a meeting with Kathy Webb, our conversation with her anyway, and we kind of agreed that maybe towards spring, when we can use the pavilion out back, of the library to have a meeting, then we'll try and get together with their board and meet them, because they're they're restricted. I think she mentioned they're restricted right now to, 10 people inside, and I think they have 7 board members. They might have even more than that, but 7 board members plus Kathy and Tracy, and then anyone else. And you start, you're up to 10 already. So outside they can be a little bit more flexible. So I'll keep you posted on that. I'm hoping we can meet April probably. I was going to say March, but looking at the snow out here right now, I don't know about that one. So we'll try April. I think I have in the back of my mind that we would have another public hearing maybe sometime June-ish or so. And in case there's any others that all the Ohio inventory properties too, we will need to get on the local register. Okay, so outreach and education, local design guidelines, next steps. I think we've all been in agreement that they are needed. Just to talk about things, that could be with the local properties. I know I saw the other day on Facebook, they had a picture of and you probably saw it too, the Masonic Temple and the beautiful wooden doors. And those are the things that we need to talk about. A lot of our businesses in probably, after World War II, probably more like 50s, 60s, went to those, metal and glass doors, and all of the, wood was taken out. And I'm not totally sure on a timeline on that, but I think that was probably about the time that all that happened. And those are things that we need to think about. We've already got Randy Samsel with the Dick's Furniture Building that has decided to go back to the wood and has taken out the glass and metal. So those are the kinds of things that we can address in, as preferences in local design guidelines. So, it's kind of a shame the way it happened, because really the only thing it did was to deprive us of having a professional help us with the design guidelines. And there's nothing that says that we can't, go back and apply for it again next year. Because I think by and large, we do have support from City Council for it. It was just kind of a fluke that someone was absent at the last meeting. So comments on it?
Well, if we do it in a timely manner where we can do 3 readings, then we don't have to have that supermajority, right?
That's true too.
No, that's just a resolution, so it's only 1 reading.
Oh,
Okay.
So it just happened that there was 1 council member absent, and to meet the deadline for the grant application, that's why it was an emergency. So normally it would have been, if it wasn't an emergency, it would have passed.
okay.
So when could we go back to City Council with it?
Well, we've missed the deadline now to apply for the grant for this year. But we could apply for the grant again next year. But I guess part of my question is, should we try to move forward and, with what we know we can do, we can look at what others have written. Medina is a good example of local design guidelines. Galleon has some. Just about anybody that has a CLG designation has a set of local design guidelines that we can steal from, basically, if we wanted to adapt.
Maybe you obviously have a council member who has some concerns. Maybe it's time to get some of those other sets of guidelines and sit down with him and have that conversation before you try again. And, because at least you've had the opportunity to discuss it with him, show him what you're looking to do, and maybe it won't be as bad.
I think that's a good point. I've been racking my brain trying to figure out how and what. I mean, I think he's upset about some things that happened with his own property, which he has since sold. He had property that was on the historic register. And so I think maybe there's some hard feelings in that respect too, or maybe not understanding what historic preservation is. But I truly believe that for our downtown area to come back and for us to move forward with economic development, historic preservation has to be an integral part of it. I had a conversation with Jessica the other day, and I had hoped she would be here today, but it was, there are people that are looking at the properties, but the properties are they want move-in properties, and the properties are in such sad shape that, so those are things that have to be addressed. We have to, look at the preservation part of it as well as the economic development part of it. Pat, did you have yeah.
No matter what we decide to do, we need to change our timeline of getting this resolution to council before the next round, okay? So that it doesn't have to be an emergency. And so that we have an opportunity to have more time to individually enlighten council members.
I think we should go ahead and try to accumulate some different guidelines from our surrounding communities. And, all of us sit down and look at those and highlight what we feel are points of interest for us. Okay. And kind of put that together as a draft of sort. But in the meantime, go ahead with returning this grant to council.
Yeah, I mean, it's already written, so yeah, I don't see any problem with doing that. I mean, the only thing is that we won't be able to resubmit until next February. So right. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, well, actually, I think what we need to do on that is wait until November when the new grant comes out, the new grant cycle comes out, to make sure that that is still funded at 100%, that it's still a priority. Local design guidelines. I can't imagine it wouldn't be. I think it has been for several years now, along with building a historic preservation plan. But we don't want to have something pass and then have to go back. So let's look at that for after November. Good point.
Yeah, but in November then.
Yeah. Or whenever the grant information comes out, and it's usually November, December. And I would insert one thing into the plan that you're talking about, which I think is a great plan, is to make sure that we involve community in it. We have some really good property owners that are really interested in historic preservation. Ben Lash, Randy Sampsell, is it Lance Gutschall from Weber's, and I think even Legends, and then there's going to be some others that have properties downtown, and I think they're going to be integral in bringing in and even maybe forming workshops that we ask them, what do you think is most important to maintain? What I mean, we even probably need to start thinking about what if somebody's going to restore a property, what time frame do we want to restore it back to? Because like I said, those metal doors and stuff is more like mid-century modern type era anyway. And do we want to take it all the way back to the 1800s or early 1900s when these buildings were built? I mean, there's something, like the wooden doors, things like that. So those are, big discussions that, that we should have starting out. And Mary, I think a lot of these other design guidelines from other cities also have discussion about that in there so we can pull pieces, from that and have discussions and say, is this the direction we want to go? I think, I think with that, city council member too, I think actions are going to speak louder than words. And I think that as we can show him and we can show the public, where we're going and what we're thinking, I think maybe that will change the mindset of some people. And there's another, I won't jump ahead, but there's other information that I included in here under unfinished business I'll talk about in a minute that I think will help us in that respect too. So
Also, the more guidelines we look at, the better educated we'll become.
exactly, yeah. So I do know too that Joe Thompson, before he left, gave us a really good list to start with of things that we ought to think about in the design guidelines. And so I think maybe we should go back and revisit that and maybe set some priorities of, of what we think. I know, murals keeps coming up in conversations. Signage has been coming up in conversations. Trying to think of what else we've done certificates of appropriateness on that might impact. But should we form a little committee to kind of come up with a list of priorities for the next meeting? That might be the best thing to do. Is anyone interested? We probably need 2 people on a committee.
No more than 2.
No more, right?
I'm not local yet, so I'm not feeling that I would be, very helpful. I'll be local April, the beginning of April,
Okay.
but not probably in time for your next meeting.
Okay.
Whatever I can do.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go back and look at Joe's list and try and get it in a form that we can look at again. And let's look at that next month, and then we'll just as a group set priorities. How's that?
Okay.
I'm looking. I brought my things with me. Is this what we're talking about? Is that his list?
Is that what we worked on, Lacey?
I couldn't quite see.
Can't see it either.
My screen is too small, sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, I just was trying to figure out which is Joe's list. That's what I was trying to do.
Oh,
The one
it was
that
just
Lacey and you worked on, Chris. That's what she was holding up, the one that you and Lacey worked on. That's what she said.
well. Let's go back and look at that too, because that was a framework too. Although I don't think it had specific
No, it didn't.
things to consider.
Chris, you were referring to the document that had murals, signage, things like that, right? The parts of the building that were possibly priorities, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can brainstorm too. I mean, I've been in on all of those conversations over the years since 2016. So yeah, let me brainstorm a list as well, and then we can sort of dovetail them and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I do think too, what Joe is saying, I think some of it's fear of unknown. I think when the question was asked at the city council meeting, it was like, are these guidelines going to be more stringent? Well, I can't answer that. I mean, that was a no-win answer because they can't be less stringent than our interior guidelines. So therefore they must be more, and I'm like, well, no, it could be clarifying. I don't feel like clarifying is more stringent, but some people might think that.
That's
More
the
specific.
I'm sorry. Say again, Pat.
That's the perception of some individuals. that the guidelines, design guidelines, would supersede and jump on top of other things that are already out there. Quite frankly, if you look at what some refer to as the Pretty City Ordinance, which is about the exterior of all buildings, historic or otherwise, it's pretty stringent. The problem with it is we don't execute it as often as we could. And if you take historic and put on top of that and go, it's historic, therefore it's more important than then that's where that stringent comes from. Plus, the individual you're talking about also had a building in the floodway, which is also an issue. It was at one point a real issue with that. And so you put that on top of, and after a while, stringent becomes sort of the word to use. And that's not, but that's how they perceive it.
Mhm. Yeah. I think I watched the commission, the city council meeting the other night too, when the CIC presented their plan. And one of the city council members spoke up and said, as you're going through this process, let us, meaning the city council, know how to help. Are there zoning and other things like that that we need to look at that we might need to change. And I think we need to look at that too. I know signage is one of those things that I don't really know much about and I don't really understand. So that might be something that maybe, Joe, you could help us with a future commission meeting and kind of explain some of the signage ordinance or point us to who can speak to that, so that we have a better understanding. And, are there things with the signage? I've heard complaints from people about signage in the historic district. So, are those things that we need to reconsider and possibly approach city council about? So I think by and large, they are very receptive to economic development and historic preservation rolled up into that. So I think that, I'm still in a little bit of shock, but I'm not really disappointed, because I do know that we have really good support from city council for historic preservation. So okay, so we have decided that we'll get that list out and we'll start to prioritize it next month, and then we'll go from there. Start to build a list of what we think initially should be included or discussed as far as local design guidelines. Start to bring in other people from the community. Start to look at other city design guidelines. And I know, Pat, at one point all of us were tasked with looking at different cities. And I just remember I had Medina. I don't remember who had what, but
I had Worcester.
Yeah.
Joe had Worcester, but then I inherited Worcester. It's all online.
Right.
But if you were wanting to do hard copy, you'd have to pick it up offline and print it yourself. They aren't distributing hard copies of those kinds of things anymore. And the only source we had that might have a hard copy would not provide us with one when they worked with us. When Perspectives worked with us, they didn't have hard copies that they would let us have, because they had a shortage of copies for some reason. I don't even remember. They brought Medinas, they brought a couple others. We saw them, but we weren't allowed to keep the hard copy of it. So, unless somebody's got the motivation to print out all of Medina's, if we really think we need a hard copy, or we could then break it down in pieces, each of us take pieces of it, something like that. Worcester's is very similar, but not quite as extensive as Medina's. Medina's is the one that I've seen that is very detailed. And I do not recommend going outside of Ohio to look for one because you have a different culture set there. You go to some place like California, the culture set's completely different than what it is for Shelby. So Medina and Worcester, and there was one other one, and I've forgotten now. I'll have to look. I'll have to look because Joe found another one, but I only have his notes on it, and it would be for back in 2016. When we said, let's see what other commissions do. That's how far back we've been looking at this stuff.
Should we think about looking at design guidelines of communities that are very much like our own?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Medina and Worcester, little larger communities.
They are a little bit larger and they have a completely different, their tax base is much different because of the industries in both of those locations. So that's one of the things that is difficult for me to say what our design guidelines ought to be, because I have to remember the size of the community, the tax base in the community, and how all of that, economic development, how is that really going to play in? We don't want to do anything that stifles economic development, but we also don't want to look the other way so often that we don't set any precedent that says, that you can't, that you should not do. And I love the way the Secretary of Interior does it, recommended and not recommended. It doesn't say you can't do it. It just says, it's not recommended that you do that. That's probably not a good idea. And I think that's how we need to approach it. This would be better if you did this, not that one, not so much. But yeah, when we're saying you can't, we're in trouble. We are in big trouble in the city of Shelby when you say you can't. Doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Gallion too is one of those that goes by area. Evidently they had historic districts in maybe some of the residential areas and some in, in the downtown core. And that's something we might want to look for too. We don't really have a historic district that's a residential right now, although we have, a lot of residential areas on the Ohio inventory, evidently. It's, that's something too that we want to look at. We want to make sure that we take care of what we have now, but looking towards the future too. What would apply to, if we had like the Boulevard or Town as historic residential districts.
Gallion is not a CLG. As I recall, Gallion did not go down the CLG path.
I don't think they are either, but they do have design guidelines.
They have design guidelines. They have a lot. They have some very strong people with opinions in historic preservation, and they've connected themselves to the Ohio Preservation Group and that sort of thing. But they deliberately did not want outside government entities, for lack of a better term, dictating. They did that on purpose. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate.
I just Googled design guidelines Ohio, and there's several. And in fact, there's 2019 Ohio Design Manual, Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, Creating Design Guidelines, Ohio History Connection, Design Guidelines, Heritage Ohio. I mean, I think there are a lot of resources out there we can tap into. Lancaster, Ohio, Oxford, Dublin, Worthington.
Awesome. I think what I could do, I went back on the inventory and I gave everybody that has that link access, and I think I sent it to you last night to make sure that you could all get on and edit that inventory. Did you try it, Mary?
The spreadsheet, you're saying?
Yeah, the spreadsheet.
I did. I found that I could change and edit, but I couldn't save it, and that made me kind of apprehensive. I mean, what I wanted to do is be able to save your copy and then make changes and then be able to send that back to you.
To do that, so it automatically saves the changes. There's not like I don't think there's a save button or something. It automatically, when you type it in, it saves it.
Okay,
If you want-
and then how does it come back to you? I mean, is it saving it on your main?
Mhm.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah,
It's
Because I
just
thought
not-
I would really wanted to, you know, have a working copy on my screen, and I couldn't do that.
you
I
can
think
make
you've
a
added my
copy.
information.
Yeah, you can go up to, I think, file and then make a copy. But it's then at that point, we
You
don't
go
see
to
it.
File, and you can't do anything under file.
Yeah.
I
So,
can download, but that it downloads in a PDF format.
yeah,
not- no.
it's meant to be collaborative to work on that one, on one copy. So that's fine. You can just go ahead and make the copies on the the one that's there. That's
I
fine.
can't. You can't unless you make it, out of the Excel format into a PDF. And that's the only, I couldn't copy it. I couldn't, I guess I could print it. But again, it's not printable it's printed in that PDF format.
Okay, Lacey, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say, there are a couple of things that you can do. You can actually go back and look at the history. So if there's any concern, I don't know if your concern was that you're going to add something that then needed to be changed back, but there's a way to look at the history. So that's not really an issue. It's like kind of having like an actual physical sheet that everyone passes around and adds something to.
Okay.
That's the idea behind it, but I don't know how to make a copy other than like what you said, doing a PDF of it.
Well, you go up to file and then it'll say make a copy of this document, and then
Your
it says-
file, that's your file tab is not operating. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You can't
Oh.
save, you can't copy, you can't do anything on the file tab.
Okay, I'll take a look at that again.
Okay.
But if we can, we should probably all use the same document that's there now. So, and that was my main concern. So if you're able to make changes to that, then what I'd like to do is make another file that has maybe links to some of these other design guidelines, and so that we kind of have a running list that we could go to if we're looking for a particular thing. So I'll
Do you
try to-
think parcel numbers should be added to your spreadsheet?
parcel numbers?
Parcel
Oh,
numbers.
parcel.
Yeah.
What do you think, Pat? Do we need that? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, sorry. I do that because sometimes I'm going to cough or whatever, and I don't like to do that okay. Parcel numbers. There's certain information that's going to be really useful on that spreadsheet long term. But what we're really looking at here, isn't it a sheet so we can contact individuals at their current phone numbers, current emails, current addresses, and so on? And isn't it really a contact sheet that we're looking at here? Now, if we're talking about an inventory that should be on file, which is supposed to be on file at City Hall for public review, a parcel number might be an important piece of information for that purposes. So I think we have to decide this spreadsheet. What is the purpose of the spreadsheet? Is it really the actual inventory on file for public records requests? Then you have to say, what would we really want on there? I was kind of wanting to make certain that the address of the building was there, and that the address of the owner could be very different from the address of the building. And I was trying to, in my mind, I was listing them by their address, so that when you sorted the spreadsheet, you could say, where are the historic buildings that are on Glenwood Avenue? And then all of Glenwood, you could sort it and Glenwood would pop up and you would say, okay, there's 3 houses on Glenwood that have been identified as historic. And then there should be a column that tells us whether it's national, and it could be just an X, a national column, an Ohio historical inventory column, and a column for local designation. And a building could have an X in all 3 columns, but it could have an X only in one of the 3. You know what I'm saying? So we identify where this building is listed. Is it listed in national? Is it listed on Ohio? Is it listed locally? Is it all 3 X's, only 2 places, or only 1? And there shouldn't be anybody on the inventory that isn't listed in one of those 3 places.
Don't we currently have it as tabs, Chris?
Yeah,
It's
we
under
do.
tabs.
Yeah. And I guess that's not a problem because most of the ones that are on the Ohio inventory right now, I haven't updated the list. Most of them are on the national list too. So I mean, I guess we could go back and redo it into one list with X's.
You have 3 separate lists if you want, but one building might be on all 3 lists.
Yeah, it would be duplication if we do it that way. So I suppose it's better just to make one list. Yeah.
I think one list would be better.
Okay, we'll do that. So we've kind of jumped ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but was there anything else on local design guidelines that we should talk about? So I think we have a pretty good plan of moving forward for March. We'll come up with a list of things that we need to prioritize. Okay, so yeah, so the Ohio inventory listings. The other thing Jessica and I talked about was, and hi Jessica.
Hi.
And I think we've talked about this in prior meetings too. We know that there's apartments above some of those buildings. We don't know if they're occupied or can be occupied, things like that. And we feel like that we need to have an inventory of that too. I think that it's really going to be important if we talk about walkable communities. Whether we really realize it or not, we have the beginnings of a walkable community. You know, we have restaurants, restaurant bars, we have bakeries, we have a coffee shop, we have you know, hair salon. What else do we have downtown now? Well, you know, lawyers, bookkeepers. You know, I mean, we have. But, you know, as far as people wanting to live downtown, there is that infrastructure that's already growing to support them, you know, after hours, you know, when they go home for the day. And if they're not working downtown, but they go home for the day, there's places to eat, places for entertainment, and it's only going to grow and get better. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, one thing that we're looking at. So when we start contacting these property owners, that we probably would like to get that information too and include that on the inventory. Jessica, you want to say anything more about that?
I don't think so. Just that we realize what an advantage that is, that infrastructure exists, because a lot of towns, they would love to have downtown living, but they didn't have it before, and it's very difficult if you haven't had it to make that conversion. But if it's already living space, it's much easier. It's less of an uphill battle to improve it. So, I think we can use it to our advantage. It would definitely be a good thing if you're contacting these building owners anyway to find out.
Yeah, and we had thought that maybe the fire department, you know, would already have that information, but I asked Chief Thompson, they don't. So, so if you keep that in mind as we're building this list. So what I'll do on that too is to update that, include the Ohio inventory. I'll just merge it into one document. And then let's see. Anyone who has time to work on this project and look up names and just even initial names and addresses of these buildings, especially the homes, the residential units, please let me know and we'll just jump in and start working on. Most of that you can collect from the which one is it? Auditor, recorder, whichever audit office that is.
Auditor side has a link.
Auditors. Thank you. Yes, Pat.
When you do, what you're gonna find on the auditor's list or whatever, you're gonna find the persons who are paying the property taxes. That's what you're gonna find. That would be the owner normally. Some are in trust. Some of these are in LLCs and trusts and so on. So there's not identified an owner. It identifies the trust or the LLC that owns the property. And that doesn't help us much because unless you can ferret out who are the people in the LLC, it doesn't help you very much. And Randy is an excellent example of that. The other thing you have to watch is when you get to homes, we have a huge rental inventory here in the city, almost as large, if not larger sometimes, than the actual ownership inventory. So you have people who rent out and own homes, beautiful homes that they don't live in, they rent them out or they lease them. Some are called leases. So you get into the leasee, leaseor thing, and you have to be a little sensitive to who's the owner and who actually has the decision-making for a historic rehabilitation or a historic restoration. Who's the decision maker on that?
A lot of times you can look at the address where the tax records are being sent, and from that address you can kind of know, just being, local, know who that person is then.
Yeah.
There is a site too that allows you to look up LLCs and find out who owns them, who registered them. I can't remember the terminology. I'll try to find. I did find it before when I was looking at this stuff. I'll try to find it and send it out.
Probably the Secretary of State site. Probably on.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's where it was at.
So Christina, when you change this list and you put them all together, why don't you resend that then to us? And we won't do much with this one until
Okay.
you've put those all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I won't get to it this weekend. I'll try and get to it next weekend so we can work on it between now and the next meeting, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okie doke. Next area, publicity. I would like to change that word publicity to communication because I think that's a more broader reaching point to it. Window signs. We have received them. I think I showed them to you at the public hearing. Just kind of waiting for better weather to go out and start delivering them to some of the property owners and to get a press release sent out for that. So, and waiting for my second COVID shot so I feel a little bit more comfortable. So, and hopefully that's this weekend. I already got my first one.
I can help deliver in April.
Great.
I think, I think we need to put together what we want to say to the people as we deliver, and whether we really want to, are we delivering it to the owner, or are we delivering to the renter, or?
Yeah. Well, and that's a good question. Some of these owners are out of state. I mean, I don't know that it would do much good to mail them something that,
No, right.
So, yeah, we'll have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, I think. And probably, I mean, I think we could go in and talk to the renters and, or we could contact the owner first and say, hey, we're going to take this, to the building, are you okay with posting it? So, and then we have something to talk to the renters about to, to post it in there. So
kind of have a key points list that we want to say to each of them.
I think most of the building owners that are out of town, have vacant buildings.
Okay,
So most of the ones that are rented have local owners,
okay,
or if they're occupying the building, they own it.
okay.
So that's
Good to know.
I was just thinking of like, walking in the Globe building, there's the receptionist.
Yeah,
I mean, instances like that.
yeah. For those ones that are out of the area, these clings are meant to go on the outside of the window. So we could easily put them on if we can get their permission to do that. So I think before we contact them too, we might want to have some idea of like where we would place it for them. So hopefully they'll let us do that. So yeah, there's a bit to this whole process, I think. A bit more than just walking up and down the street, I guess.
Yeah, lapping on some clings.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to add to the agenda, and I'm not sure, I think Joe, you went down to get coffee when I brought this up, but I'd sent an email at one point about possibly, rather than sending an email out to property owners about communication, could we have a blog area on the Shelby, on the City of Shelby site? Because it is a WordPress site, and so it's real easy to create a blog portion. Jessica could actually use it too for her momentum. Forgot the name of your thing. Municipal Momentum, that's what it was. That way the public could see what we're doing too. And there's a way that you can subscribe to the blog and then you just automatically get the updates. And I don't know if that's something that can be done, but I think that would help and probably be better. When you start sending out emails, if you get it to a certain point of emails and they start treating it, the recipients, their email starts treating it as spam, and sometimes it doesn't get through. Mine, Municipal Momentum, I think is what you call it. Actually goes to another part. It doesn't go to my main email. It goes to another, because I have Gmail. It goes to some other account. Oh, we have a kitty now instead of Pat. Okay. So that kind of, helps with that too. When you start getting, I'd have to add it up. We have probably near 100 property owners that we're going to be working with once you start adding all the the state inventory residential units and stuff. Joe, have you thought about it? Or
It's not a problem. We can put it right on is it just a link you put on the historic page, or?
Yeah, we can do that. And then can it be a part of, do we need to make a separate blog? I guess that's what I'm asking, because then that would cost us money. If we could do it within the city, you should be able to give us like just access to one little area to be able to post things. Or if you want to, we can put them in as we can talk about the details of how to do it.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but I'm sure whatever.
Yeah, I don't know how the site's built. I'm assuming it's probably pages. It's all pages rather than posts. Okay, so what we're talking about is building posts that would be part of that, and then we would just categorize them. And so we could categorize one historic preservation. We could categorize one for Jessica, and then you put a link for that category in, and then they just see that, and it's like a blog. But yeah,
I think and if not, Rochelle can help us and get us started.
Yeah. Okay. So what does everyone think about that? Do you think that would be a better way to go than email?
Yeah.
Did you say that there is an option for subscribing so people can receive it via email if they want?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's just a little link that you can say subscribe to it.
I think that's a simpler way to get it via email for people who don't want to go to the blog specifically on a, one-off. But then we don't have to deal with a separate email program to send those out. So I
Yeah.
think that's good.
There's also ways too that if we wanted to share it to Facebook, to a group there, we could do that. The city doesn't have a Facebook. Well, actually, the police department has a Facebook page that I think most times things can go to there, but there's also that Shelby, Ohio, Then and Now, has over 5,000, I think, on it. Might even be more than that now. So there's some really good places where that we can share that information. So, and what I'm envisioning on the post is when grant information comes up, or when someone makes a change to their property, we can highlight it. So be just a lot of different information, anything and everything that has to do with historic preservation in Shelby, I think could go on that. So I'll come up with some parameters for the next, and I would like for you all to help write too. I don't have to be the only one writing on this. If we see something that we think is worthwhile, that people that are dealing with historic preservation in town might want to know about, then we can add that on there. So, okay, thanks, Joe. I'm glad to hear we can do that.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes.
I had to step away for a little bit.
Right. Your cat filled in for you.
Pardon?
Your cat.
My apologies. It was probably Max. He's the one who takes over when I'm not around.
Okay. All right. So, Pat, just to fill you in, we're discussing adding a blog to the city site for historic preservation, and if Jessa wants to do something for economic development too, that would she'd be able to do that rather than sending out emails. It seemed to be, and that way the public can tune in too. There's a way that you can subscribe to the blog, so you get those emails anyway, but it's just in a kind of a nicer format than what we would do in an email.
So who's going to manage the blog?
Well, I'll take initial responsibility, but I would like for everybody, when you see something that that you think would be of interest, whether it's, it could be an upcoming webinar that you want property owners to know about. It could be upcoming grants that might be available. It could be someone that's working on their property. It could be anytime we do a certificate of appropriateness, we could put that information on there and say, this is what they're going to be doing, and when it's done, put some good things on there. Best practices could be another thing. So it's anything and everything. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay. Unfinished business, the historic engine house, next steps. Again, in the commission meeting, or city council meeting the other night, I heard a little bit of buzz about Mayor Shag and Chief Thompson talking with the new EMS company. So I'm not quite sure. I was hoping he would be here today. Do you have anything to add, Joe, on that?
Yeah, I've not talked to them what that discussion was. So
Yeah,
I think it was just some of the discussions is okay, this thing keeps long-term lease. There's improvements that need to be made or maintained, at least maintained, and who's paying for that, and because that's an issue. So
yeah, we had talked at the last meeting about maybe seeing if we could ask for a committee of the whole. I think City Councilman Gates talked about that, so that might be something that we start discussion on that. so that we know where we're going on that, because we, Mary, to fill you in, we were given purview last January to kind of come up with ideas that the Engine House had bounced around from committee to committee about, you know, what to do with the building and that kind of thing. So we're kind of given a purview to, you know, help find funding for restoration if needed, reuse, that kind of thing. So, and it kind of all got put on hold when the EMS company was being sold. So, okay. Engine House history digitization still on hold. 59 West Main Street, yay, yay, the blue building. The CIC announced at the city council meeting Tuesday night that the CIC is in the process of buying the building. They and we, I'm part of CIC too, are very excited about that because it is a building on the National Register of Historic Places, and they are really gung-ho about making sure that the building is restored appropriately. There's no, I don't think there's been much talk yet about what to do after we buy the building, like what, you know, what will happen. It was just that everyone was really adamant that we needed to save that building and to use it as a really good example of how to do historic preservation in the downtown area. So Lacey, I sent them the picture. Lacey sent me a picture a couple days ago about it was actually the Kerr and Marvin building, which is now the old First National Bank building. And it looked remarkably like the Shaw building, which is what we're calling 59 West Main Street now. And I sent that image to Tom Claybaugh, and he said, yeah, that would be a really good example to go by. And the picture that she sent me was an etching of from 1873 atlas of Richland County that had it in there. So it's basically a line drawing, but it's gorgeous. And if it could be restored to that era, to that, you know, to that. It was built around 1873. I think it had just been built when the 1873 atlas came out. So it will be amazing. Jessica, do you have comments?
I want to see that picture.
Oh.
And we'll tell you, it's still in the process. I mean, we've been trying to buy this thing for 2 years, really. So hopefully it will be in the next, it should close any moment, but hopefully it'll be in the next 2 weeks. And then we'll figure out what we're doing.
And then we figure it out.
Is there a timeline on the restoration?
At this point, no. I mean, realistically, we need to secure the property, get it out of the hands that it's currently in, and then shore it up. So there's obviously some issues with it. There are bricks that look like they could fall at any moment, I think have. And there's holes in the building. So it's just in really bad shape. And it's absolutely disgusting inside, like just awful. So it's really just kind of, making it safe is going to be the first step. And then again, we'll have a committee working on what to do with it. And there's obviously going to be funds that need to be raised. Clearly you guys will be involved in this process because it is a historic building. But there's going to be a lot of challenges. This is really like testing everybody's, ability to make a project work. There's not limitless funds. It's a big building. It's in terrible shape. So it's going to be a challenge on all levels. But if we can pull something off with this, it will really set the tone, I think, for downtown redevelopment. So no pressure. We just have to get.
Yeah, and we really have, I should have let you make the announcement, Jessica, because it really was her doing that we were able to get the building, that CIC was able to get the building in the first place. So it was a smart thinking on her part to jump on it. They, and finding a donor that was willing to front that money to buy the building. That was a big part of it too. Joe, I did have one question. 59 West Main Street has been on the agenda for city council for like forever, it seemed like, and I never really knew why it was on there.
It was because the west side had some deteriorating, and they just wanted to stay on top of it and make sure something got done. And it was, with the situation that was going on, it just took forever. So now once CIC gets it, we can come to some resolution on getting that fixed and move on.
Okay. And the other reason it's on our agenda is because we had done a certificate of appropriateness that with stipulations to it that ran out last summer to replace the glass in the building. It's with, I don't want to call it plywood, but I suppose that's what it is. You know, he had replaced the window with plywood until the end of 2 years, or if it was sold before then. So that still is.
I would suggest to this committee, if it's possible, to put a stay on that or extend it for another year, knowing what's happening with it. Obviously, the window is probably at this point low on the priority list. Like I said, there's so many other issues. So I think that would be a good faith gesture for this commission to, you know, extend that out for a period of time.
Hey, Pat.
I'm not really sure. And it probably is a legal question, but I don't know that the new owners are obligated under the previous owner's COA. I don't know that they are. It's actually a legal question. Now, as far as us deciding to extend the dates, we would have to really start a new COA with the new owners and talk about that window replacement and put it into a new COA. I think that would be the wisest way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure they're legally obligated to something that we agreed to with the previous owner. I'm really not.
Yeah, I mean, we wrote it that way, but we didn't ask for any.
No, never asked for a legal opinion on it or anything, because we honestly thought it would move, the building was going to move faster, or the previous owner was going to be a better owner and move on it in a different fashion. So I would entertain a COA once it is officially in the hands of the CIC, to entertain a new COA that talks about some of the things, the window and anything else that they really would like to be doing, because it still is under our purview. It's still up to us to approve COA. So I don't think we have to pursue the old one. I'd like to see a new one. And I don't know, Jessica, is that feasible? Does that make sense to you or to COA, CIC, that we start with a new one, a new COA?
Yeah, I think. And realistically, I mean, like I said, the initial work that'll be done will be shoring up the building. And Chris is probably going to be part of every one of those conversations. So this group will be involved in that whole process.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and anything external we had to do a COA for anyway. So so we'll just roll it into that.
I think this is an excellent opportunity to show the community that getting a COA and going through this process isn't as painful as everyone thinks it is. It's, you know, it's an opportunity. So
Cool. All right, good. Then that takes care of that. Still looking for a new commission member. Our should have someone in here by the end of February, although we still don't have any viable nominations. I haven't talked to Mearshag lately, but I don't think anyone has stepped forward on his end either. So I'll put a bug in his ear on that one. And then new business number 13, discussion about the Elyria grant proposal for preservation funding. Hope you all saw the newspaper article I sent. It was kind of interesting to me. Their premise and the whole thing was, you know, instead of putting money towards demolition, maybe money could be put towards restoration. I sent an email to, I think you probably saw that Council Member Gates did say that Shelby does appropriate funding for nuisance abatement. I sent an email to Brian Crum to ask him how much money is usually put towards that, but I haven't heard from him, and now I know why, because he was in meetings.
It's in the health department line item, and it's used for if there's like one instance over on Walnut, there was a house, it was abandoned, and the creek rose and the front whole wall caved out. So we used our money for that, to tear that down. We used it for, this is like the Napoli's building. So that's what that money's been used for.
Yeah.
Do you know about how much it was?
I think we usually put in, it's in the health fund, I think around 80. I don't know.
Okay.
Mhm.
Pat?
Yeah, the nuisance issue was for the city to be able to provide money when the health department needed money to take down a condemned building. That's where it was at. It was never really, the historic preservation grants thing would be a whole nother item altogether. The two things really are not related. I remember also, I think it was on South Gamble, there was a house that had caught fire, majorly damaged, lost, couldn't be, whatever. And it sat, and finally the city said, the health department said, we got to get that down. And the city said, use the nuisance fund. So it's the nuisance fund has a different concept behind it. And because it's under the health department, it's about getting rid of really condemned buildings that the health department is saying, gotta go, dangerous to have this building in our community. That's what that's for. And I 100% support that, because sometimes insurance just doesn't kick in. Occasionally, Joe, we get a little bit of money back from some insurance somewhere, but that doesn't usually happen. So yeah, that's what that is about. The thing that is it Elyria? Yeah, Elyria is doing. The argument is a very good argument. If you can put money aside, taxpayer money aside to take down a condemned building, why can't you put tax money aside to preserve a building, especially historic in nature? So that it's an excellent argument. I'd love to see how that would be discussed in council. I think it's a super argument, and I think there is an opportunity for that. But we'd have to remember that going down the nuisance street is not where we want to go. We want to go down a positive street that says, hey, this makes the city even better because we are helping our community and our economic development by making historic buildings attractive and safe, and et cetera and so on. So yeah, it's an excellent idea. Elyria has a completely different tax base than we do, though, folks. Completely different tax base.
Okay, that's good to know. So so we're not really talking apples to apples then. No, because I was gonna, the other question I had for Brian was like, where does that money come from? And so, you know, is it taxpayer money or is it something else? And I do know that one city councilman, it's on a committee, when I first met him, as I reached my hand out to shake hands, he said, I will never put a dime of taxpayer money into historic preservation. Okay, thank you, good to know. That's one.
Yeah, it is one. It is only one, but it is it is a conversation. It would be a great conversation to add to our committee of the whole that we might want to have with council and with the administration about where does historic preservation fit in? And Jessica should be in that same committee of the whole because of the very close tie between economic development and historic preservation. And that's the avenue I think we really need to always be very, very adamant about. If you don't put money, if you don't help these building owners of these historic preservation buildings, they're just going to continue to decline. And if you want a ghost town, that's one good way of making certain we have a ghost town, is let historic stuff decline.
Yeah.
That's a sign of a ghost town. And I don't want to see that happen. And I'm pretty sure the majority of council doesn't want to see that happen. But you will get that argument that taxpayer dollars don't belong in that category. The fact that we are listed now on the general, in the general fund as a miscellaneous item, we now have an actual item number. I think it's 692 for historic preservation. The fact that we are even in there, you have no idea how much that went to do that, because the general fund is basically taxpayer dollar. There was a lot of conversation about getting that in there.
And I do think that the DRD that Jessica's talking about, you know, can help with that, but it's going to take a long time to build that up. And it, you know, it's something that, you know, we need that money now. Jessica, I kind of relayed a little bit of our conversation we had the other day, that there are people that are interested in the buildings, but they want something that's turnkey that they can, you know, just walk into. And if you want to expand on that, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to businesses all the time who would like to have a presence downtown, and they're looking for what inventory is available. And what we do have, we have a few available. Most of them are in such states of disrepair that it's just not realistic for them to start a small business and repair an entire historic building at the same time. It's just not reasonable to expect them to do that. So there's a lot of businesses that I can't find a home for that would love to be in our downtown. So I think the challenge for this group is to find some funding, find revenue sources for these people who own the buildings or who would like to own the buildings, so that you can take some of that risk off of their shoulders, because they are all in disrepair. And maybe that's, you know, maybe we model the way the CIC does their building. Maybe we kind of use that as a guinea pig and look for ways that we can fund that. And then once we've done it, then we could do it again. You know what I mean? So I think there, again, speaking to Joe's point, there's a lot of opportunity to do this right and to make sure we are flexible enough that that we make it realistic for Shelby and what Shelby is capable of, and you know, the business's revenue here, keeping that in mind, like what they're going to actually make. And sometimes those historic tax credits, it's like they benefit people who have a large tax burden, and that may not be the people we're targeting here. So we have to look for other ways to help them, to plug them into other processes, systems, grants, whatever it may be that can get them over that, get them to the finish line. And because once we've improved them to a certain level, you know, when they transfer, somebody's not going to have to do that all again. They can just do cosmetic things and go from there. But a lot of them are so outdated. I mean, they have either the original or like a very, you know, crude old electric system, HVAC system, all those things. And it's just expensive. It's just crazy expensive to fix all of that. And, you know, then you add certain other requirements on top of it, and it just feels overwhelming. It just does. So I think it's the commission's, you know, I would love to see you guys moving in the direction of like, how do we make this, and communication, you're exactly right, Chris. Communication is the key to that. How do we make this process seem less daunting? Where can we find ways to help them wrap their head around it and find resources to help them through it and make it feel less oppressive, so that people will buy the buildings and fix them and not be afraid. And I think, again, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I've never restored a historic building, so I don't know all what to expect. I know a little bit more than I'd say the average Joe, but the average Joe, sorry, Joe. But you know, for somebody who knows nothing about it, it probably feels like another stressor, another layer when you're looking at a building that's in such disrepair anyway. So all that to say, I think we have a great opportunity here for all of us to learn, figure out what works, what doesn't, where the obstacles are, and ease those for people. And hopefully then we can, because you're right, it's historic preservation and economic development should go hand in hand. We should be able to help businesses and owners and, you know, people through that process so they can make these buildings usable again, as opposed to them just deteriorating and crumbling.
Yeah.
So.
And if you'll go back and listen to our meeting today, under number 1, the certified local government grant, one of the things that I did put in there, I put a link to the grant in the agenda. And we talked about one of the things that you can do with that grant is to help somebody restore or rehabilitate a National Register listed property in the community. So, you know, there could be, now it's a 60-40 match. So, but, you know, I mean, that could be up to, you know, maybe $15,000, $20,000 that somebody, if they matched it, you know, could do that. So, but if you want to listen to the conversation, I won't belabor the whole thing, but we talked about possibly at some point then trying to figure out, you know, what kind of priority, how we would help decide, and even talked about helping them write the grant to be able to do that. But there's still questions I need to ask. I don't know if it has to go through city council, like, you know, like the grant that we just tried to do. But so there's a lot of questions to it, but I think that can be a possibility too. You know, maybe
that's huge. And then you're as opposed to just asking them to, you know, you're going to approve what they do. You're coming alongside of them and working with them through the process. And I think that is key. Totally. Love it.
Yeah. And there's another Ohio History Fund grant too that we applied for another project, but could also be used for that too. So, and you know, in the 4 properties I was thinking about before, we've got the engine house, we've got the mausoleum project, although it's not on the National Register, you know, 3 of them are. Randy Samsel's, you know, Dick's building is on there, and then the Shaw building. So I mean, there's you know, at least 4, and probably more properties than that could be vying for that money. So we need to come up with some kind of, you know, equitable way to be able to help. So that'll be coming in the future too. I have a quick question. Joe, are we part of NOPEC, the energy thing?
Don't believe so.
No. What energy, where do we get our energy from? I've forgotten.
Well, we're our own utility company, but our power comes from AMP Ohio. There's all kinds of agreements with AMP Ohio, and it comes out from several different companies.
Okay. Somebody pointed me to NOPEC, and I thought, well, maybe one of our, maybe somebody that we're with would have the same kind of things, but NOPEC has grants for like green initiatives, like repairing roofs can be part of it. Replacing windows that need to be, of course, we don't want to replace windows. We want them to fix the windows, but you know, yeah, storm windows, you know, adding storm windows could be part of that. But so maybe we need to check in with some of the agencies that we work with within the city and see if they have some kind of grant program too.
I can look at AMP. They do some stuff for economic development for us.
Okay.
So they have any kind of program like that.
Thank you. Pat, did you have a comment?
I was going to comment that with what what Mr. Samsel is wanting to do with the Dick Building and what the CIC hopes are for the Shaw Building. Those two buildings are, not only are they historic, they're like the basics of what the city was built on. Those two buildings are, Joe, correct me, like they're probably lots 1 and 2 or whatever. At that particular intersection of Gamble and Main, there's just to bring all 4 of those buildings, but especially get 2 of them because there's so much interest from the owners. Get 2 of them to jumpstart what I really think should be the restoration rehabilitation of the entire central district. And of course, we've talked about the engine house being crucially important right now for the city to make up their mind what are they going to do with it. How is that going to be maintained? How's it going to be cared for? Because it definitely is reaching a point where lack of maintenance is very clear that there's a lack of maintenance. So there's another program, Chris, and do you remember something about something called Building Doctor? A program through SHPA, I think through SHPA, where they come in and analyze your whole building and kind of let you know where and how you could set your priorities to restore or rehabilitate that building. Do you remember that? I'm not certain I even have anything in the files on it anymore, but I do know they come in from Columbus and they are historic architects who come in and go through things about that building to bring it up to code, restore, rehabilitate, and still keep its historic identity very clear. Do you remember that?
It's on the SHPO website. I saw it the other day. I didn't look at it. I thought they did workshops. I didn't realize that they actually come in.
You pick a building. You pick a building in your community and they come in and analyze that one for you.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's how that goes. But you're saying it's on the website. I will research that one again because both the Shaw Building and the Dick Building would be perfect buildings for a program like that.
And the mausoleum.
Come in and the mausoleum, but the experts can come in and say, "Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Look at what's going on here." It's called Building Doctor. I'm sure that's what's the name of it.
Right, it is, and it's on the SHPO website. But I just thought that was something different. I thought it was workshops.
No, it isn't. It's actually they come to you, to a particular building that you have chosen. I'm pretty
Mention it. I was just skimming. They mention it as a clinic for a community. So it didn't specify like as one building. Of course, I didn't read the whole thing, but it sounds like they might come and say, here's some things to look out for to identify like what needs to be fixed and how to do it. Like common things is what it sounded like. But even that would be very helpful, I think.
Yeah, actually that'd be even better because they could look at the whole downtown core maybe. And
Well, it's worth us researching that one. And if there's a price tag on it, that might be something that we would look at for Rich History Alliance.
Yeah.
That might be where we would want to have some assistance on a grant through them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So will you bring back information for the next meeting?
I'm going to go look at this Building Doctor thing. Yes, and I might even just flat out call Adam and say, Adam, what do we do and how do we do and what does it do and will it be helpful to us where we are now?
Okay.
Yep.
So to recap the discussion about the Elyria grant proposal, I'm hearing us say that maybe we want to roll that into a committee of the whole conversation with City Council. Okay, yeah. Along with the engine house. Okay, good. I think we probably need to let them get through the appropriations first. So maybe we approach them like April, May. Okay. All righty. Any other new business? Any other comments?
And how do we find another commission number? I mean, we've been down this road multiple times. Thank you, Mary, for jumping in when you did, because this is difficult. With
It
a
is.
5-member group, down one, you're down 20% of your workforce, and things have to get shuffled. So yeah, we really need that 5th member. And I know where our weaknesses are in terms of experience on the commission, what we'd like to fill in with, but we've got to get an enthusiastic person on board here. And really, in reality, I believe, Mary, your term will end at the end of 21. So we don't want to have to replace you that quickly. So you know what I'm saying? We have got to deal with this. And I just don't really know how to go out myself and say, gee, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. I mean, the names come to mind, but in some cases, you got to be sure that it's not somebody who is connected to an already historic building, because then you have that conflict of interest clause that we have in our rules and procedures. You can't have anybody on here who would benefit from our decision making. So it's got to be somebody, you know, I am really trying to figure that part out. You know,
I think it's time that we run an article in the Globe and talk up the commission and what we're doing, and you know, ask, you know, for people interested, and see, you know, you're going to have to state that they have to be residents of the city at this point in time, and see what you get. I mean, I think we need to publicize. We need to.
Yeah, we have to be active with it, because the mayor expects us to help him find these people. So there needs to be some publicity, you're right. And it's an article, and maybe, you know what, we don't even have a recent photo of the 4 of us who are currently. When Lacey came on board, we were supposed to take a new photo, didn't happen. And now Mary's on board, we haven't taken a new photo. And some people would interact because they know who we are that are on board. So we just really have to do a better job ourselves of figuring this out. Where are the folks that, and it's not enough to be a history buff. That's not enough. It has to be because we do serious work. We sit around and talk about history afterwards, but history buff is not enough. We need somebody who's willing to understand how the government piece works and how history works and what our purpose is economically. Jessica, is there anybody that you come across that you think somebody who would be somebody who's willing to invest in our community? But I'm not talking dollars, I'm talking time. I'm talking talent. You know what I'm saying? Or am I talking it to the?
Let me. I think there could be people. Let me give that some thought.
And there have been people, you know, I've posted it on like the Shelby Then and Now, and you know, there's like 5,000 people on that Facebook group. Not all of them live in town, but and I've had people, you know, private message me about it. I mean, that's how we, you know, well, we were already friends, but how we got connected. But and there are people that have been interested, but either in this case, they don't live in town. They work here, but they don't live in town. And or where they work, they can't get off at 9, you know, to be here at 9 o'clock in the morning. They could probably make an evening meeting. But I'm really resisting evening meetings because I know Jessica and Joe are an integral part of this group, and they already have evening meetings that they have to attend, and I can't see another evening meeting for them. So I don't think it'd be fair. So, you know, I'm sorry?
I concur with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're you're just saying out loud what he's thinking.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And for that reason, for that very reason, the 9 o'clock a.m. meeting is something that I hope we never have to adjust just to find another member. I hope there is someone, geez, gosh, Mary, we retired folks, we just have all kinds of time on our hands, right?
Right.
I know, it seems to me like there should be somebody that's retired that was an architect or an engineer or, something that can help us with the building aspects of it. I don't think we need anybody that knows history.
Somebody just came to mind.
Okay.
I will call him.
I mean, a historian would be fine, but I just don't think, there's not a whole lot of historians in town either. I mean, I'll tell you that. Tom and Joe have already, put their time in, and
Yeah, everybody has that one little piece of time when like the 4 years they were in high school or whatever that they relate to. But to relate to history as a whole, no. A lot of people, their history is their family history or some eventful thing in their life. But to take on the 1800s and so on, yeah, they're not jumping up and down for those. So yeah, that's difficult. That's difficult. But I did something to come to mind just now. Somebody I haven't had a chance to talk to in a long time, right? Just have a conversation. So yeah, but it's always that. We're always looking at this and going, man, we gotta build a network here, not a historic preservation network, not a history network, a preservation network that has a different kind of attitude about it. We have to build a network. We need not just building owners can't do this because they would benefit from it, and they can't do that. It has to be somebody who would have no real benefit from this, but really have a passion for it. I don't think we're going to find another Joe Johnson. I'm sorry. I don't think we're going to find another Joe Johnson. I don't think we're going to find another Tom Glavell. I don't think we're going to find those again. Those were powerful people who came on board early and got our feet under us. But we're in a different state now. We're in a different state.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to figure out how we fix this. How we do
Right.
this.
No, I understand. It's been weighing on my mind too. And like I said, I mean, I've been asking, but I've even asked people like Brett Dunbar that probably still has people in town. Brett Dunbar would be a fantastic person to be on this committee, but he doesn't live here. And if it was a different world and we could always do this by Zoom and it didn't matter whether, you were lived in town or not,
Yeah,
you could
well,
probably do it.
there's reasons for that. There are very definite reasons for why we have the in town, and the so many of the members must be citizens, must be electors. It's called people who vote here. That's an important element, and it should not be looked at any other way. It's important.
Well, yeah, just sitting and listening and thinking, gosh, I wish I knew more people in Shelby, right? You develop more connections that way. So that is very helpful. I was going to say, as far as being able to do kind of the heavy lifting, if we really are short on options, is anyone connected to any other boards? I think, generally speaking, board members have a little bit of a feel for how these kinds of things go. And then if we could identify someone who has an interest in historic preservation, because the benefit is we're not so far along in the process organizationally that we are all experts on historic preservation, and a new person with no knowledge would just be lost. We're all kind of learning together, I think, to some degree. So, it could be someone who's just a little bit more comfortable with, being involved in the community on a board or something like that, I think too.
you know, there may be somebody that's on one of the other city committees that's, you know, getting ready to roll off or did roll off or wants to take on another duty. So maybe we'll look at some of those lists too and see. I don't think there's anything that says I can't.
Planning Commission would be a good one.
Who's that?
Planning Commission might be. Joe, what about people on the Building and Grounds Commission? Would there be any of them that might be looking to make a change? Because it doesn't meet that often, I understand. Building and Grounds.
Take a look.
Take a look. Okay.
Okay. All right, well, we'll keep looking and see. I'm sure that we can fill somebody by the next meeting. We just need to identify that person. And I will contact the Globe and see if they'll do an article for us.
Okay.
It would be,
And somebody needs, what is it? There's a article they've been running for an intern to work at City Hall. They've been running that one like every day for almost 2 weeks now.
yeah,
Certainly, we could come on and say, this is another city opening. The mayor has to get in on that. This is another city opening that we need, and this is what, you know, and a description of it and that kind of stuff. If they can do an internship, they certainly ought to be able to do a member of the commission. Sorry, I'm being a little bit on the defensive there. I'm sorry.
you know, it's an interesting proposal. I wouldn't say intern, but a younger person that's maybe even in college that's interested in historic preservation or architecture or,
Yeah, their field is such that it kind of overlaps with us.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
could be interesting.
They can't have a 9 o'clock class though.
Can't what?
They can't have a 9 o'clock class.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
Sorry.
that is true. And they have to be willing to stick around for 5 years too. So,
That's another one too. If you're in college right now, 5 years down the road might as well be 50.
yeah,
You have no idea what's happening 5 years down the road.
Yep.
Sorry, but yeah, a young person who's established here, now somebody who has
mhm,
come into the area and has established themselves here, you
yeah,
know, maybe 30 something, that's an idea. That's a 30 something who's really established here. So,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Meeting stands adjourned then. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
You know.
Nice to see